Miami was hosting Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks on Tuesday, and they had everything under control the first half, locking up the Slovenian superstar and playing incredible defense. But Dallas made adjustments in the second half, shutting down Miami's offense, and the Heat just couldn't respond. Is it time to get worried about Miami's half-court offense and their ability to make adjustments? We'll give you our takeaways, who deserves the blame for the loss, and what Miami could have done differently. This is Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Heat Nation. It's a Wednesday edition of Locked On Heat, your daily podcast covering all things Miami Heat, however you may be listening or watching on YouTube, Odyssey, or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm David Ramil, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Wes Goldberg. We're coming to you straight after the unfortunate Miami Heat loss to the Dallas Mavericks. They were somewhat shorthanded on Tuesday night. They were without Tyler Herro, Caleb Martin, who we'll talk about a little bit later on the show, and no Dwayne Dedmon as well. And no Udonis Haslem got poked in the eye at some point. I don't know how that happened, but either way, he was out for the game as well. But Miami was riding high after a 5-game win streak. They looked great in the first half. They were playing tough defense on Luka Doncic, holding him to just 10 points on 2 of 9 shooting, well below his season averages, while getting the same aggressive Bam Adebayo that has been a staple of this win streak, 13 of his 21 points coming in the first half. But the second half, the second half. Our old friend, the third quarter, reared its ugly head after Miami had been so dominant in recent third quarters against the Mavs. They just completely fell apart. The Mavs countered with a 2-big lineup, putting Maxi Kleber in alongside Dwight Powell, and Miami's smaller lineup just couldn't find a way to score. Credit to Dallas's defense, which has been really good all season, and they found a way to be absolutely deadly against Miami. After the Mavs had built a double-digit lead of their own, the Heat finally mounted a short comeback late in the fourth. Miami had cut the lead to 5 with a Jimmy Butler jumper. They had possession of the ball, and then things got weird. P.J. Tucker drove to the hoop along the baseline, drawing Dwight Powell away from Bam Adebayo, who was positioned in the dunker spot. Tucker floats an amazing lob pass to Bam, who catches it perfectly in stride. But Kleber, who had been out on the perimeter guarding Jimmy Butler, closes out quickly and fouls Bam's dunk attempt. But not so fast. Mavs coach Jason Kidd challenges the call, and while replay shows that Kleber does in fact hit Bam across the forearm, he also swats the ball either simultaneously or just before he hits Bam's arm, and so the foul was reversed, and what could have been a huge dunk or at least an and one, perhaps maybe 2 free throws to cut the lead to 3, instead turns into a huge momentum shift the Heat just never seemed to recover from. Miami scored just 4 points in the last 3 minutes after the reverse call, and they wind up losing 107-99. Still in first place in the Eastern Conference West, but what a bizarre occurrence. You were at FTX Arena. I can't imagine what you were thinking sitting there in press row watching this call get reversed. From your vantage point, it probably looked clearly like a foul, right?
Yeah, it was a foul. I don't really understand why they reversed it. I saw Bam talking with the official afterwards, and the official was basically motioning as if, Kleber hit the ball first before making contact with Bam's body. I don't know, man. That looked like a foul. It felt like a foul. But also, I don't really think it was a big deal. Like, yeah, it was reversed. I don't know. I don't think that wins the game or loses the game for Miami. Look, if I would have told you that Luka would only score 21 points on 5 for 19 shooting and be shut out in the fourth quarter of this game, you're probably thinking, yeah, the Miami Heat are going to win that game. But that wasn't the case. And I know that Luka was limited from a box score perspective, but his presence was so intensely felt in that game. Miami dialed up a defense completely to shut out Luka Doncic for the entire game. They doubled him for stretches. They switched on him for stretches. They switched and scrambled for different stretches. They completely dialed in on Luka, and that freed up everybody else to do their damage. It freed up Kleber to score 19 points. It freed up Bertans, who they just acquired at the deadline, to score 12 points. Jalen Brunson, 19 points. Dorian Finney-Smith, 14 points. Josh Green, 8 points. With all the attention that they paid to Luka, the idea was, well, we're not going to let Luka beat us. And he still kind of did in a weird way because everybody else managed to beat them. Miami's defense, look, Erik Spoelstra after the game kind of credited the Mavericks defense, Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, they more credited the Mavericks or they kind of blamed their own defense.
Yeah, I don't agree with that, but we'll talk about that a little bit.
I actually do. I actually think, kind of looking at this and kind of thinking about
Well, I
it.
saw Jimmy's response. I think it was Ira Winterman who
Yeah.
asked him about the scoring there, or kind of hinting at the Dallas defense, and then he said, "I think yours was more of an offense." This is Jimmy's response. He said, "I think yours is more of an offense question, but I think we scored enough points." I don't know. I mean, maybe the vibe was different at the arena, but they really crapped the bed in the second half. They just couldn't get anything going. They shot 7% from 3-point range in the second half. Like, I mean, that's just not tenable.
No,
I know
it's
they
not.
weren't exactly. Yeah, I know.
26% overall, 7 for 27 overall. No, I agree. Look, it wasn't just defense and it wasn't just offense. And I know we're gonna hand out blame pie later in the show, but
yeah,
I
go around.
I look at what, like, that wasn't the defensive effort. Like, we've seen the Heat go cold for stretches. We know there are concerns about the half-court offense. And I think of the biggest takeaways in that game, the half-court offense is what we need to talk about. So you're right in the sense that there are offensive concerns that we need to discuss, but we've seen that already. What I didn't see this season, but what I saw in this game was just sort of those defensive breakdowns, that leaky defense. We just don't really see that. Like, the Heat are so good at rotating and being on a string, and they have been for so much of this stretch that they've sort of surged to the top of the Eastern Conference here, and they just weren't. I thought their initial switches and their doubles and everything on Luka at the point of attack were actually pretty solid, and that's why he was only 5 for 19 and only 2 for 7 from three-point range. And by the way, just holding him to 19 shots is a success in and of itself. But there's a reason why the Mavericks shot 44% from three-point range, 18 of 41 overall. And it's because the weak side defense, the help defense, the next level, the layering of the defense just wasn't there the way that we were accustomed to seeing it. But can we talk about the half-court offense a little bit more?
Yeah, I think, well, to me, what really stood out was the lack of shooting towards the last few possessions of the game. For inexplicably, and I feel like Erik Spoelstra probably deserves a slight piece of blame for it. I think there were no shooting out there. I know the shooting had struggled all night against Dallas's defense. Duncan Robinson couldn't seem to get it going. Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, etc.
Yeah, nobody those three, 2 for 15 overall from three-point range.
Right, not great, but at least there's a threat there, right? That's the whole problem. The whole thought process behind Duncan Robinson and the extended minutes that he gets, why the contract doesn't seem as particularly egregious, is because there is an impact he has. As a three-point shooter, he commands respect. He's going to draw a double team. Somebody's going to get an open opportunity. That wasn't the case. Instead, you had 2 possessions back-to-back with Jimmy just kind of dawdling behind a three-point line, not exactly sure what to do with the ball. On one possession, he takes an ill-advised contested three-pointer. On the next one, I think he turns the ball over. He didn't know exactly what to do with it. Just really bad management of the ball at that point in time. And I think there's just a flow to the game when you have a shooter out there like Duncan that just wasn't available, or Duncan or Max.
And that's the Luka effect, right? Because when Duncan Robinson was in the game, the entire offense, the Mavericks it was crazy. The guy who had Duncan Robinson was guarding, the Maverick that Duncan Robinson was guarding, would just wave at Luka Doncic when he crossed half court and then set the screen, and then they would get the switch, and then Miami would be forced to double Luka at the point right after the switch. Once he kind of takes his first step, they would go and double him, and now you're scrambling on defense, and then that, like I was saying, that second and third layer of defense wasn't necessarily there. So Spo kind of felt like, all right, we kind of have to go Gabe Vincent here, because unlike Strus and Duncan, he can actually hold his own one-on-one more so than those guys when he gets on these switches, and they ended up switching more late than they were doubling a lot more in the first and third third quarter, and they ended up just switching and going kind of one-on-one in the fourth quarter. But the half-court offense really, but to your point, needed a shooter. They were doubling Duncan Robinson. They were closing out hard on him. I wonder if, it was around the 7-minute mark that they kind of went with Gabe and the rest of the starters, and I kind of was like, yeah, this is going to be the group going forward, but I do wonder if they're going to need Duncan at some point. The half-court offense tonight, 88.1 points per play, according to Cleaning the Glass, which is really, really awful. And compared to Dallas, which with a 101.1 point per play rating in the half-court, it's extra awful. This was a really tough night for Miami's offense, and I think all the things that you were talking about, Jimmy Butler settling for shots out on the perimeter, taking a three late in the game, not really knowing what he wants to do when he goes up in the air with the ball, stuff like that. This has been Miami's problem. It was their problem against Toronto.
Yep.
It was their problem last year against Milwaukee. It's
Oh, yeah.
length. And Dallas and that unit that closed the game for Dallas has 4, 6'8" or taller players, basically. Luka Doncic is 6'6", 6'7", whatever. And Jalen Brunson, who plays way bigger than his size, just sort of like Gabe Vincent. But Miami had a problem with Dallas's length and size, the way that they have had a problem with Toronto's length and size, the way that they have had historically problems with Milwaukee's length and size.
Oh, yeah.
This is an issue for Miami, especially in the half court. Could they have done better on defense to force transition opportunities? Maybe. They could have gotten out in transition a little bit more. I don't know. But this was a game where the Mavericks, I thought, just won on both ends of the court and kind of showed us the Heat's problem and something that they need to address. How do they address it? They need to loosen up that half court offense with some shooting. And when you're three shooters, again, Duncan Robinson, Gabe Vincent, Max Strus go 2 for 15 from beyond the arc, it ain't going to happen. And I think the name that we haven't mentioned yet, but was sorely missed tonight, was Tyler Herro. This was the game, just like against Toronto the last couple games. We were talking about how, like, that's the guy you need who could just sort of find his own shot. He doesn't need the half court offense. He is a half court offense in and of himself. And so they really missed Tyler Herro tonight.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. Like the thing that I'm looking at when I see a player like Luka Doncic, what puts him in a category alongside Jimmy to a certain extent and LeBron James is the ability to make plays at their size, to get to the rim at will, to do all the things that they can to change the course of a game almost single-handedly. But Doncic and LeBron can shoot the ball. They're at least a shooting threat. Jimmy is not. And then you have him out there on the perimeter struggling and not sure what to do. It simplifies the offense to a way the defense can figure it out. And maybe to your point where you were saying, maybe if Dallas didn't play a great defensive game, and I think they do deserve some credit because they've been very good all season, they were just at least able to figure out what Miami was going to do when there was no threat from any of their shooters because they were either weren't knocking the ball down or they weren't on the floor. And that just made Miami's offense easier to read and figure out. And they did a really, really good job of that in the second half. So it got slowed down into a pedestrian offense. It was really ugly there, and it should have been better. Just that whole starting lineup just struggled from the 3-point shot. But you know what? I think you're right. Tyler Herro most assuredly would have been a difference maker, a guy that you can just give the ball to and say, you know what, go to work, do it. And that is, like you said, the half-court offense. He would absolutely have been a difference maker out there. Might not have been enough to win the game, but at least probably would have energized them at certain points in the second half when they absolutely necessarily needed it. But anyway,
we'll like move on. This is another, we're going to talk about Oladipo later on as well, but like you could have easily pictured him at the end of the game in for Gabe Vincent's spot too, right? Where he gives you a little bit more shot creation. Even Caleb Martin to a certain degree might have been a little bit more helpful. Another one of those 3-point shooters, but you don't want to blame a loss on referees, just like you don't want to blame a loss necessarily on injuries tonight. But yeah, those guys were missed.
Yeah, is there anything else they could have done as far as invigorating an anemic half-court offense, or is it just a matter of the personnel they have out there? Because from my take, I just couldn't see anything in particular.
No, that's something I think Spo will ask in film study, right? Is what could we have done differently? Could we have gone? I thought they could have done more like guard Jimmy Butler pick and roll with Kyle Lowry or Gabe Vincent. I didn't see a whole lot of that kind of pick and pop type of stuff. Maybe they could have done that as like a high pick and roll option to sort of loosen things up a little bit more. But again, I think the Mavericks just came into Miami's house and just
there was a nice pick and roll tandem there with Omer Yurtsev and getting some spotted minutes in the first half, but they kind of went away from that in the second half. And then at that point, Dallas had just again figured out what Miami's offense was capable of. But we'll move on. We'll talk about Victor Oladipo, as you mentioned in the last segment of the show. And the next segment, we'll talk about who deserves blame for the loss. But before that, if you're an NBA fan, and you probably are if you're listening to this show, are you looking for a daily fantasy option for the NBA? Then you need to try the award-winning app Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. I love it, and I know you will too. It's easy to use. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry, and it's just you versus the projected numbers. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Prize Picks is safe and offers fast withdrawals. Use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. They offer a variety of options. It offers any prop you can think of, from point scores to rebounds, even steals. It allows mixed sports entries. And so for a limited time, Prize Picks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our users. Users get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point. But you must use the code NBA. That's right. This is an exclusive offer available for Locked On fans. Sign up today and use the code NBA. You get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point. That's PrizePicks. Make sure to get the app today.
All right, it is time to slice up some blame pie here. We're going to give out percentages of who deserves blame for this Heat loss. Thank you for making the Locked On Heat your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. It's free. It's available on all platforms. Our first slice of blame pie tonight, David, goes to Luka Doncic. Like we discussed, I think that he deserves a lot of the credit from the perspective of the Mavericks for this win. We discussed all of this, but I really do think that this is why Luka Doncic is one of the best 5 to 6, 7 players in the NBA. You mentioned the shooting that he has from the perimeter combined with his ability to get to the basket and all these things. He's also a next level passer. I mean, I know Nikola Jokic is the best passer in the NBA, and I'm not disputing that. Luka's really close. Luka's really close. And that's another thing that sets him apart, I think, from Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler is a good, willing passer. Luka is a next level, seeing everything ahead of time, like LeBron James type passer, right? And so he broke down Miami dialed up a specific defense to defend Luka, and he broke it. He solved it. He broke it. And Miami, by the fourth quarter, was in shambles. And that's why they couldn't defend late. And that's why they couldn't get out and transition late. Everything is tied back to Luka Doncic. So that's 50% of the blame pie. But I'm going to give another
50%?
heaping
50%. That's a pretty big heaping of pie there.
I believe I'm telling you, I think Jimmy Butler put it the best at the end of the game. He said, I asked him a question about their defense, and was it just adjustments going forward, or did they anticipate making all those looks? Was it in-game adjustments, or was it something that they game planned for? And he kind of said that they kind of game planned for it, that you have to throw surprises at him, but he summed it up. He's like, he came in here and he beat us. He got them a win. I don't remember exactly how he phrased it, but he basically said that.
Carried us to a win, I think he said.
He led them to a win. 50%. I think that's fine. That leaves another 50. That leaves the other half of the pie. I'm going to give 20% of what we have left. So we have 30% now left. We have 20%. I'm going to just hand off to the lid on the basket. There was a lid on the basket. Miami could not make a shot. This was, again, one of those. There's a lot of X's and O's stuff that's interesting from this game. But there's also a really uninteresting thing that we could say is, hey, it's a make or miss league. And tonight you only went 7 of 27 from 3-point range. I think you could argue, hey, you shouldn't have only taken 27 threes. You probably should have put up more threes. But when the threes aren't falling, it's a lot to ask a team to put up 20 more threes when they're shooting 26% overall from beyond the arc. So it was just one of those weird nights where they couldn't get anything to fall. A little bit of credit to Dallas's defense and the length and everything like that, but they missed a bunch of open looks too.
Kleber is a very good defensive player, and so is Dorian Finney-Smith. I think both of them unheralded defensively. Just those two bigs out there really seem to just change the course of the game. The drive and kick offense has worked so effectively for Miami, and it just seemed to shut down when you had these two big towering bodies kind of collapsing things, making things a little bit more difficult. Not easy to get those swing passes out to those open shooters out along the perimeter. And then, yes, I think 0 for 7 from Gabe Vincent. That's particularly egregious there. Not to heap anything on him particularly, but yeah, not a great showing from him. Well, if you're not getting any boost from your backups, you're just not going to be able to have any chance of victory here.
Yeah, and Miami, that's been a big key to Miami's season so far is their reserves, and they didn't win those minutes tonight, to your point. I am going to give 10% of this pie to PJ Tucker. That was not a
PJ.
Good yeah, that wasn't a good PJ Tucker game. He couldn't stay in front of Luka defensively. He didn't have it.
Nobody could, to be fair.
I mean, Tucker, look, I don't mean to pick on him. It felt like he did a worse job than anybody else that was dealing with it. And I include Duncan Robinson in that. I actually thought Duncan did an okay job. Tucker, 6 points on 2 for 6 shooting, 1 for 3 from 3-point range. Couldn't really find his spots on the floor offensively. Wasn't really getting to his floater. Wasn't really getting to his corners. Also had 3 turnovers on the night, and that was a really big issue for Miami. 12 turnovers that led to 21 points, and that's the other 20% is just overall the turnovers. You just can't turn over the ball that much, and that's why when you consider that they shot basically the same percentage overall, 42% to Dallas's 45%. So Dallas slightly better, but not tremendously better. The rebounding margin, Miami had it. The turnover margin wasn't horrible. It was 12-8, but Miami scored just 6 points off of Dallas's 9 turnovers, sorry. And Dallas scored 21 points off of Miami's 12 turnovers. So you could credit transition, or you could blame transition defense too. But you also look at like the points in the paint. Like the Heat had 52 points in the paint to Dallas's 24. Like there's a lot of markers here, and we mentioned like the Luka numbers in the fourth quarter that kind of lead you to think that Miami would have won this game, but the turnovers,
the 3-point shooting, too, Dad.
Shooting and the turnovers, that's why I said
Dallas,
20% the lid and the lid on the basket, 20% the turnovers.
Dallas is shooting. I mean, 76 field goal attempts in total, 41 of those from behind the line. So that was a big part of their offense, clearly. Are you done with blame pie here? 100%. I'd like to take away 5% and put it on Jimmy because of that late game. Offense was, I think he bears some of the responsibility for that as Miami's best player. I also think that 5% should go to Erik Spoelstra because inexplicably keeping a shooter out there for as long as he did. And I know he inserted Duncan with, I think, 40-something seconds left in the game or about a minute left to play, but it was too little too late. Miami was already down 7 and no real chance of closing the gap. They could have used him out there. They could have used the threat, and who knows? Maybe he gets hot. Maybe he knocks down one shot, and that's all it takes. You're looking for any answer. You're looking for any kind of offense. And I think maybe he might have been able to provide that. But other than that,
I think I'm okay with giving some to Spo. I won't give Jimmy any blame for this. I understand that those couple possessions were frustrating, but the Heat didn't score a bucket. Like they didn't make a field goal for, what was it, 6-7 minutes in the fourth quarter. It was just Jimmy Butler getting to the line, and he went 13 or 14 from the free throw line. Like I know those 2 possessions were tough, but the Heat lose this game by 20 points if not for Jimmy Butler. Like he was the offense. So I don't know. Again, those possessions were frustrating, but they're not in this game at all.
A sliver of pie, Wes.
I'm not giving him a sliver. I'm not. You could give him a sliver of your own blame pie, but he's not getting any of my blame pie. I'm okay with the Spo thing. I think it's okay. It's
our blame pie. We have to give him a sliver.
It's always our blame pie.
All right. Well, anyway, we'll move on and we'll talk about some news that's shaking up Heat Nation with a possible return of Victor Oladipo sometime soon. But first, a reminder that football might be over this season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all of your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, the UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile devices to learn more about the trends in action. Bet Online, where the game starts. Just a reminder that you can always reach us via email at lockedonheat@gmail.com or via Twitter using the hashtag AskLHeat. Be sure to please subscribe to the show and leave a review. This is a fun segment here because despite the loss, there was some refreshing news around Heat Nation. A couple of different bits and pieces here of information. Caleb Martin, first of all, who did miss the game with a sore Achilles and has missed the last few games because of the Achilles, his contract has been fully converted. He is now a full-time member of the Miami Heat for the rest of the regular season, which means that he is playoff eligible. He will be on this roster for the playoffs and hopefully making an impact at some point soon, because clearly on a night when his defense and his three-point shooting would have been able to provide some kind of a punch out there, he was absolutely necessary. The Heat also added, I'm drawing a play, Haywood Highsmith on his second 10-day contract with the team. He was with the team earlier when they were having their issues with COVID and needed replacement level players. Highsmith was brought on at that point in time. He's brought back again. He actually played 16 minutes against the Dallas Mavericks, finished 2 of 6, almost exclusively taking all of his shots from 3-point range, finished with 6 points. So a solid night for him, but I don't think you can expect too much. Is he another developmental star in the making? Who knows? It's possible. It's good that Miami has him on the radar. They've also added Javonte Smart to a 10-day or was it a two-way contract or a 10-day
two-way,
contract?
a two-way contract, kind of backfilling
Replacing
Caleb Martin's spot.
Exactly. Yeah. That's right. So that was announced right after the game ended. But also announced after the game ended was that the Miami Heat was sending one Victor Oladipo down to the Sioux Falls Skyforce to begin 5-on-5 practicing with the Skyforce, not gameplay, 5-on-5 practicing. So they wanted to make sure that we were all very clear about that it's a stipulation that we are putting out there, not gameplay. He's not going to be playing in any games, but it is part of his return to conditioning to eventually make his return to the Miami Heat. Wes, exciting news for all of Heat Nation.
Yeah, and a couple of notes before we get to the Oladipo stuff, which is the headline here. But Javonte Smart, kind of a standout for the Sioux Falls Skyforce team. He's been on a scoring spree in the G League lately. He was obviously with the team's summer league program in Vegas this past summer, so been on the radar for them for a while. And you could tell, like, probably on the short list of guys that they wanted to add to two-way contract, plays the guard position, which now kind of interesting that both of their two-way spots have been given to guards. You don't really see that a whole lot. Miami historically has gone with like more length and versatility at those spots, but apparently they feel like this is the way to go. So cool. That's great for Javonte Smart. Caleb Martin, interesting timing because they could have waited a couple of weeks to do this. They didn't necessarily need to do this. And yet they decided to do it now. What does that mean? It means obviously he's playoff eligible, right? But also, again, if they did this a month from now, he would have still been playoff eligible. So that's not really relevant to the timing here. What it means is that it's a show of good faith for Caleb Martin, considering that, by the way, he's dealing with an Achilles situation right now. It's not a tear or anything major. It's just soreness. He wasn't even ruled out. He was questionable for tonight's game before he was ultimately ruled out. But this is a show of good faith. And it's also, hey, look, we know that we could still go out and get a guy on the buyout market and still stand under the luxury tax. So that's a key component here, right? By trading KZ Okpala, they're still able to clear enough space beneath the luxury tax in order to do that, whether it be Goran Dragic or somebody else, we'll see. But it's also just like hey, let's just do you a solid and give you like some more money, because the nature of a prorated minimum, if we would have waited a month from now, you wouldn't have made as much as you would have made right now. And so they're just doing him a solid ahead of obviously him becoming a free agent this summer. So it's a show of good faith. It means that they hold him in very high regard. So that's cool for Caleb Martin. The Victor Oladipo stuff is huge. I really don't want this to get swept under the rug. This is a big deal.
I think it was the one sign of encouragement, I think, for Heat fans too. Like, despite the loss, everybody's already tearing at each other. Heat Twitter civil war. And then the news comes out about.
You think that if they won this game, they don't send Oladipo to the G League?
I don't know. I don't know if it was just a way of calming everybody down and saying, "Look, we've got good news on top of the bad ones."
Look over here. I don't know. Look over here.
A little distraction, perhaps.
Wave a little Oladipo in our face, and we're like, "Oh, what loss?" No, this is huge. This is really big. He's only been doing 1-on-1s and 2-on-2s and just some loose scrimmages against Dan, the video coordinator, and whoever else. Like, this is a big deal. 5-on-5 scrimmages, full contact type of stuff. He is, to use the phrase that everybody likes to use when players are in these kinds of situations, this is the ramp up. This is the ramp up. And
we saw with Klay Thompson, right?
We saw with Klay Thompson. To your point, like the Warriors, I remember when Steph Curry was coming back from his broken hand injury, out months and months. And right before he came back, they sent him down to Santa Cruz, where their G League affiliate is, and he played a 5-on-5 scrimmage. This is sort of the last step before. Now, I'm not saying that the return is, hey, like he's coming back as soon as this All-Star break is over, but he could be. Like, I'm not saying that's not the case. Like, this is coming soon. That's what this news tells me.
Yeah, I think it's just enough. Look, they're not going to practice. They travel to Charlotte on Thursday for their last game before the All-Star break. Then there's the extended break. Their next game after that, I am in the process of looking that up. What is it, a San Antonio game, I want to say? Maybe I'm mistaken there. I'm not exactly sure what their next game is. I probably should have looked it up sooner. But the reality is that I would imagine that he'll be getting some extended,
at New York, February 25th, and then the next home game is the Spurs at home, February 26th.
So
that's the game to circle, right?
That's the game to circle. I think
11 days from now.
I think that's it. I mean, I'm trying to think in my head. It's like, do you want to kind of take some of the pressure off because he's probably going to be nervous and rusty, and that's the nature. I mean, we should all kind of pump the brakes a little bit. Well, I'll get excited if he can score a point. I'll get excited if he can play for 10 consistent minutes out there, because that's asking a lot after the kind of he returned. He played for most of last season, but he was always up and down. It was a little inconsistent. Yeah. He's healthy now. From all reports, he's back to being the player that he was in terms of his leg strength.
That's what the players are saying. Yeah. Right. I don't know. I look, you're right. They're taking a patient approach with this as opposed to last year where you're kind of like, what do we have right after the trade deadline? Let's figure it out. So that's good. I think that's good. And as far as the conditioning, that's why you do the 5-on-5 stuff. Now, he's not going to come out and play 30 minutes a night, but I don't know that he was going to do that anyway with the way that this roster is built. Like, I don't know. I think if you can get a solid 15 minutes from him, that's a pretty big win. That's Absolutely. A really big win. Haywood Highsmith played almost 16 minutes tonight. Strus played 20 minutes. Gabe Vincent played almost 30 minutes tonight. Like, there's plenty of minutes right now to go around. I understand Tyler Herro and some other players are out. But, this is a good time for him to come back post All-Star break, because they're going to have 20 some odd games to kind of figure it out what he can give you in advance of a postseason series.
That's a good point. I think, you keep, kind of stay in shape, keep practicing with the team. The All-Star break rolls through, and he can still continue to do work with the team, in Sioux Falls. The Heat will be obviously on there, a well-deserved and well-earned break. They go into the All-Star break still atop the Eastern Conference. Like I mentioned before, they're still tied with the Chicago Bulls. So, there's a good time for him to be able to get some work in. And I don't think the expectations need to be there. I think it's all about making sure that he returns healthy at a time when he's comfortable, because I think we're all expecting him to be an impact player. And I think the team expects him to be an impact player. But I think some of those expectations might be a little too high for a player who's missed a significant amount of time over the last 3+ seasons, right?
They don't need him. He's a luxury. The way that we keep talking about him, the way that everybody kind of keeps talking about him is, wow, wouldn't that be nice to have Oladipo back? They don't need Victor Oladipo. They haven't this year, at least. This is a luxury. And so for that reason, they've been very patient with his ramp up and getting him back. And they haven't been saying this isn't like getting him at the trade deadline last year where they're like, look, we're obviously not the team that went to the finals. We need something here. Hopefully it's Oladipo. It doesn't feel that urgent this time around.
I agree.
And for that reason, there's not going to be as many expectations, and that's probably a really good situation for him to walk into.
But I'm still excited, though. I'll be honest with you.
I'm stoked. Yeah.
For a player like Victor, a great guy.
Always one of my favorite players before he got to Miami. I agree.
I love talking to him in Orlando when I was covering that team. He's always been fun, interesting. He's just had a rough up and down career, and the last few years have been very, very difficult. I know he wanted to be out there more than anybody. And, the fans have always turned on people who are hurt and not available because they feel betrayed. And I know he kind of forced his way out of Indiana to some degree, but all that's water under the bridge right now. He's just a guy trying to make good and trying to reestablish his life as an NBA player. So we should all be rooting for him. Hopefully we'll be able to see him soon out on the floor, because I think that's going to be great. But whenever Victor Oladipo makes his return, we'll be sure to bring it to you here on Locked On Heat. Thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Remember that every episode is always free and available wherever you get the show. So make sure you subscribe to get the best coverage available. Make sure to also check out Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. This is David Ramil signing off for now. Thanks so much for joining me, Wes.
Wrap it up, B.